First off, congratulations on the
Thank you so
success
much.
of this
Thank you.
documentary and having the balls to do it
Thank you.
right off the bat. Let's talk about, we all know what happened on October 7th. We see it from the top of your doc. But then you decide to go a little bit further. Talk about the genesis of how you thought in your mind, I think I need to tell this story.
Yeah, I mean, so I was visiting my daughter, Lexi, at the University of Wisconsin on October 7th. And listen, we woke up, it was game day. We were going to a pregame party, and we woke up to the news coming out of Israel, and we saw on our phones, and I actually have the Rocket Alert app on my phone because I go to Israel, once every year or every other year. Anyhow, I have it on my phone. We saw what was happening. We saw the images coming out of southern Israel of babies and children and grandparents and young people from the Nova Festival being murdered, being kidnapped into Gaza, and that was horrific. But to me, it was really the response on October 8th when we saw Hamas being celebrated as freedom fighters in Times
Yeah.
Square. And then I heard what was happening on college campuses and at Harvard. And, more than 30 student groups had signed on to a letter blaming Israel for the attack on itself. And then we saw the domino effect at other universities. And it was in those like weeks after that where there was all of this hostility from around the world. We saw what was happening in London with protests and in Europe and here in Canada. So it wasn't just the States, but we also were met not just with the hostility, but with the silence,
Yeah.
right? So it was silence from women's rights organizations, from UN Women, from Hollywood, from government,
Yeah.
from Capitol Hill. So it was, and by the way, also in my own professional networks it was really hostile. It was silent and hostile at the same time, right? And I just felt like something as epic is going on here. And what we were seeing on social media was so divisive. So it was, to me, it was like that sort of trifecta of the streets, the campuses, social media. And I wanted to just unpack how we got to this moment where Hamas is being celebrated as freedom fighters rather than as terrorists, and to really understand all of the complexities that have led to this moment.
Yeah.
And so I got going.
That's
I started working on the film at the end of October. Right
right.
away. I knew I
Right.
needed to do this film.
No, absolutely. And that was my question. Like, how did we get here? My mother is a grandparents, Holocaust survivors, and in my
Mhm,
lifetime, I never thought that I would see what is happening in our world. My God,
mhm.
and it's scary, it's upsetting, and but the campus stuff, my boys are, thank God, older, graduated, working. They're all through the university system. And I don't know as a parent if they were going through that now, how I
Yeah.
would handle it. I don't know how these kids handle this shit and how
Mhm.
parents handle it. How did you like what do you even say to your daughter?
Well, I have two kids. I have a son who's 23, Jonah, and my daughter Lexi. Listen, they've been sort of groomed to understand, and to be, have a proud Jewish identity. My son is much more apathetic. Not, he's
Yeah.
agnostic, but my daughter had been to Israel the summer before, and I think, it really, she feels definitely connected. I listen, I talked to a lot of friends when I was making this film who were like, I don't understand. My kids went to Jewish day camps, or they've been to Israel, they were bar and bat mitzvah, they went to Hebrew school, and they're on the other side of this. What do I do?
Right.
I think it was very heartbreaking for a lot of parents,
Yeah.
in the Jewish community, to see that your kids like protesting against themselves, really,
Yeah.
in support of terror and in
Yeah.
support of Islamic jihadism, and they don't even understand it. So I there's part of me that feels sensitive, and I don't like to dismiss and just diminish these young people's sense of what they're doing, but I think that they don't understand that their
Yeah.
minds have been hijacked. That the narrative, that there's so much propaganda out there, they don't understand what they're supporting. Some of them do, but I would argue most do not.
Right.
And that's the biggest thing. We get into this film with. Have you seen the film yet?
Oh yeah. 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 Oh,
Okay.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. So then
Yeah.
you understand, like, we dig into intersectionality, And that's where we're at. Like, if you're for climate change and you're for reproductive freedom, then you're for Palestinian liberation, right? And they don't understand what all of that means, and sort of in what the Palestinian liberation means.
Yes,
When
yes,
they're not chanting for two states and for peace, they're chanting for one state and no Jews. And I don't think young people understand that, or they're so far down the rabbit hole that they think that there shouldn't be a Jewish state because they don't even understand. Like, we have nowhere else to go to. Like,
yeah,
there's no returning to it. We're all refugees. There's no
yeah.
returning to our motherland.
But it's
We
one
have
thing to have freedom of speech. It's
Yeah.
another thing to get violent, to watch some of this footage, or even before your doc and me watching the news. And I mean, to stop watching the news. I couldn't watch it. It was giving me so much anxiety. But to see these kids on campus and not allowing Jews to go on campus. And then it starts
Uh-huh.
getting violent. And I wondered from you, I mean, look, I know this has been a long road for you and not an easy sell. No question, obviously. So many people probably said, no, we're not getting involved, whether it was PR people, whether it was people who you approached in Hollywood to front it. Thank God for people like Deborah Messing, Michael Rappaport, Patricia Heaton, who has been such a,
Right.
like, oh my goodness, on and on. But then there's the other side who they don't say anything, or it's frustrating. But anyway, for you to go through all of this footage, to do hundreds of hours of interviews, how did you kind of wheedle it down to this documentary? And I know that this doc is not for the Jewish people, it's for everybody else to
It's
see.
for everyone. I mean, that was a Herculean task, to be honest. We have like 170 hours of footage. I did more than just about 80 interviews, and I think only 37 of them made it into the film. So we left a lot out.
Yeah.
And every scene could be another full-length documentary. I have
Yeah.
extraordinary voices, and it was heartbreaking to make the cuts that we did.
Yeah.
But I had a vision for what I wanted to unpack, and I really wanted to explain how media bias and, UN bias coming from Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, how that's fed into this moment. I wanted to actually explore more about the United Nations, and that unfortunately just didn't make it in. We didn't have the time for it. But I also wanted to let people know how few Jews there are in the world. Like, that's a data
Yes.
point that I wanted to. So I was like, we need to get a graphic, and we need to somehow explain that. There's just so much in there. And then obviously tell some character driven stories so it doesn't just feel like an academic, boring, wonky documentary, but
Yeah.
you're actually invested in some of the students. So listen, editing is really hard. There's tough cuts to be made. Um, Ultimately, we have so much footage that I'd love to, do something with and create longer, scenes later on with the footage that we have, and do other things with it. But I wanted to make sure that it was cut, meaning edited in a way that would speak to non-Jewish audiences.
Mm,
Very, very important. And that would also maintain the attention of young people to keep it
right.
engaging. It's very fast paced. It's a premium film with like incredible graphics and animation.
Yes.
But to really be a film that people would be compelling enough that the young people aren't going to be, looking at their phones or getting up in the middle. So
Yeah.
I think we've achieved that. We are getting great feedback from young people, college age students and
Yeah.
teenagers. So that was the goal. The goal was to keep it moving, to pack a lot in. It's very ambitious in its scope, and to keep it to a watchable amount of minutes.
100%. And then, I'm watching it and I finished watching it and I'm going, oh my God, like, do I lose hope? Like, I'm going to be a grandmother in the fall and with new
Mazel
generations coming
tov.
in.
Yeah.
Thank you. And it's like, oh my God, do we lose hope? And then I see some of these amazing students that you've
Mhm.
interviewed, Tessa Veskler and the rest of it. Tessa's story is just mind-boggling to me, but she's
Yeah.
just so brave. And and then I'm thinking, no, there is hope. We can't lose hope, because there are the Tessas out there. There are the people who, can you just, talk about that a little bit, about how impressed you were with some of these up and coming people who are going to be running our world down.
They're incredible. Listen,
Yeah,
they are the ones who give me a hope, and we wanted to end the film on a hopeful note. I didn't want people to be, wanting to jump out of a window after
yes,
watching this film.
yeah,
And the young people are extraordinary. They have a gravitas to them. They're so well spoken. They have such a strong sense of identity. They're courageous, and they're really, they give me hope. And so does, we also end the film on allyship and why that's so important, and that the voices on the other side are definitely loud, and we're
Yeah,
definitely outnumbered. Just
right.
when and here, in Canada, in Toronto,
Yes.
you're really outnumbered. Just the demographics of the Muslim population versus the Jewish population. There's no question when it comes down to like sheer numbers. But what I did find was that we do have allies in other communities, and they also want to support democracy over Islamic jihadism and extremism. And that's the theme of the film, that this is not about the Jews, it's not about the state of Israel. This is about democracy in the West versus extremism. That
Yeah.
is what we're talking about.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you, I mean, after going through all this footage, after talking to so many people, what maybe surprised you the most, Wendy?
What surprised me the most was really what we discovered with SJP, with Students for Justice in Palestine. And there's this incredible scene that takes place in a Marriott hotel room in 1993
Yeah.
in Philadelphia. And the FBI does a wiretap, and it's Hamas members in America, and they're discussing how to infiltrate American media institutions and college campuses, and that they're going to frame their language in a way that when they're speaking to people on the left, they're going to frame it in terms of apartheid and colonialism. When they're talking to people on the right, they're going to, which you actually don't hear in the movie, we cut it
Yeah.
for time, but they're talking about the founding fathers and patriotism. So already 30 years ago, they are playing the long game. They are planning to message their way into the American consciousness and culture in a way that's palatable to an American audience.
Mm. Yeah, and like I said, it's opened in the States to filled theaters. You must be, so proud and happy that people are seeing it. And like I said, not just Jewish people, like non-Jews, other people are seeing this and hopefully getting something from it. And then hearing you've been showing it in Toronto and it is going to open here. That's so fantastic. You know, but what kind of, after people come up to you, maybe after Q&As or whatever, and talk to you, non-Jewish people, what have been their response and what are they saying to you?
Yeah, the non-Jews are blown away. They just didn't know. They're
Yeah.
so startled by what's going on, and it's information that's really brand new to them. To Jews as well. I will argue a lot of people just don't know the history.
Yes.
We have graphics, that show the Levant in the Muslim world, and there were so many Jews at one point, and there are none today. Like people don't even realize that Jews are not all white,
Of course.
that
Yeah.
Jews are people of different colors. Like there's so many sort of there's so many critical things in this film that I think that we unpack for not just a Jewish audience but for a non-Jewish audience, and they are struck by just the level of violence against the Jewish community, and I think they're understanding why we're feeling what we're feeling. They're also frankly surprised by how few there are of us,
Yeah.
which is people, the Jewish community, I think around the world, historically has punched above their weight,
Mm.
and we're over indexed in a lot of different industries, but really our numbers are teeny tiny.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot that's very revelatory to a non-Jewish audience, and afterwards people are saying, "How can I be an ally? What do I need to do?"
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fine. So how do you follow this one up? What's next?
And what's next is Poison Ivy, which is going to be a film about what's happening in academia and how we got to this moment in academia.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, oh my goodness. I can't wait to see that. Well,
Yeah.
listen, Wendy, I could talk to you for 100 hours about this. It's such an extraordinary documentary. You've
Thank you.
really done such a fabulous job and I'm going to do my best to get the word out there. My friend was at that screening last night and she was just like blown away by the Q&A and the film and everything. And so hopefully more and more people will get to see this. And are you planning getting it in schools? I think that's
That's
a huge
that's the
bonus.
long tail mission of the project. I'm raising money for that right now. If any of your people want to donate, yeah, that's the long tail mission of the film, is to create a curriculum and cut it down and get it into schools,
Yeah.
and really get into education is super
Yeah.
important.
one step at a time, but let's hope it
Yeah.
makes a difference. So thank you so much for this talk, and thank you so much for your time, Wendy, and best of luck with everything. It's been a pleasure to talk to you about it. Thank
Same
you.
here. And so where is this going to, are you writing a story? Like, what are you
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
with
yeah. I'm
this?
going to get it online. I'm going to run this full interview, like
Oh,
uncut,
okay.
full interview, and that's online. And then for other outlets, just snippets and things. So yeah,
Great.
yeah. I'll send the link, whatever, once it's up.
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thank
Great.
you,
Thank you
Wendy. I
so
appreciate
much.
it. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
Take care.
Take care.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.